So glad you're back today. What you gonna talk about?
Okay, first thing, anybody who was here earlier, we had no sound and can't do anything about it, particularly when the battery goes dead. And for all of you who are just tuning in, fantastic. I'm glad to have you. For you who missed it earlier, this was my best performance. And it actually, it gets personal. It gets really, really, really personal. So, today, we're on Tom Jones' Pharmacist. This is our Andropause series, and it's a fantastic series. The name of the game is let's get our lives together and let's make sure that we do this right. It gets personal because one of the guys in my hometown recently was out jogging or bicycle riding. He was with a group of guys, and guess what? He died. He fell to the ground, and before he actually hit the ground, he was dead. And this gets really, really, really personal when it gets like that, because why did he die? We don't know. But I've got a hypothesis, and actually the wind is telling me that's it. It's running. It's around today too. But the hypothesis is that something went on in his life that actually could have been possibly prevented. And it made me start to think about life and all the different facets about life. And life is such a short thing anyway. Do we have everything in the medical community right? Well, I don't think so. We don't know everything. But in this situation, a normal, healthy 49-year-old individual out riding a bicycle with a group of other guys, and all of a sudden he falls off of the bicycle and dies. So what happened here? And I have a hypothesis, I don't know, but we're going to talk about it today, because we're going to talk about what do you do to get in great shape. What do you do? What's the health issues that relate to great shape? And how do you protect yourself as you grow older? All right. Again, my name is Tom Jones. I'm a pharmacist, and you're on the show that's going to talk about all the issues that we want to find out. Number one. All right. When you have testosterone in the body, is it good or is it bad? And how do you know? How do you find out? What are the parameters? And do you supplement with testosterone if you are an adult? All right. The first thing that we want to know about testosterone is when you're young, say teens and 20s, you have higher levels of testosterone. You have a normalcy of testosterone that's relatively high. But as you get to be 30 years of age and more, you're going to lose a certain amount of testosterone yearly. Your level is going to gradually drop. It's not a tremendous drop, but it's a gradual, small drop each year. All right? And as you grow older and as you continue to age, it will drop even further. All right. But what does cholesterol do in the body? And actually, we want to find out what is the role of cholesterol in the body. So we're going to talk about today and how it affects your life and how it affects all the things that you want to actually learn about and become knowledgeable about. So, all right. The main thing that actually cholesterol does, that testosterone does, it enables your cholesterol to form shape in the body. All right. What I mean by that is you've got good cholesterol, which is HDL, and the different subs of that, and you have bad cholesterol, which is the LDL. All right. You want higher levels of the HDL because that's the good part. You want lower levels of LDL. And actually, the role of HDL and the role of testosterone is to remove the excess cholesterol from the arterial wall of the artery and transport it to the liver for disposal. All right. This is called a reverse cholesterol transport and is vital for preventing arterial occlusions. All right. That's the first thing that you want to actually think about when we talk about testosterone and its activities in the body. All right. When you go to a doctor and you are checked for cholesterol, they do a blood test, and that's actually very important to actually help you determine your cardiovascular risk in the body, because you do not want cholesterol to build up on the walls, plaque to build up on the walls of the arteries, because this is not a good situation. And statin drugs haven't really been shown to work all that well in elderly people, my age and up. So we got to kind of figure out this whole scenario about arterial occlusions and cholesterol and plaque and all the parameters that go into this process. Okay, so testosterone plays a role here, and actually it affects the it has effects on the youthful processes, metabolic processes in the body. And these processes are real important because you want to stay as healthy and as young as you are as you grow older. All right. You don't want to have unnecessary hormones in your body. However, all right, let's just think about something. Now, we're going back to a balancing act. We're going back to a balancing act because we talked last week about women. Okay, let's review right now, because we spent a whole week going over how women need to have hormonal balance in their lives in order to feel better, to be better, to actually be optimal, more optimal in their lives. Number one, they have estrogen. Estrogen needs to be balanced. There needs to be a certain amount of estrogen, and you need also, number two, progesterone, because progesterone balances estrogen. First thing that I learned when I went to study compounding pharmacy was you balance the hormones. Back in the early days, we have innovators like Jonathan Wright and Dr. Lee who taught us always you balance. You don't want unopposed anything in the body. You want your estrogen to be balanced with progesterone if you're a lady. And you want to have adequate amounts of testosterone. Never too high. Never too high. Women actually have levels, small amounts of testosterone. All right. What about the guys? Now, if you're thinking they have more than one hormone, well, guess what? You're right. So men have testosterone. It's at a certain level. But men also have a tiny, tiny, small amount of estrogen. Progesterone doesn't play as much a role in the guys. They still have it. But if you stop and think what I just mentioned about ladies, I want it balanced. They need their hormonal levels balanced. How about the guys? Do they need balancing? Absolutely. Your testosterone is here. Your estrogen is here. You never want this to rise. And you would like to bring the testosterone level and maintain that balance all through your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Only balanced. I didn't say up way high, but I certainly didn't say get any more estrogen than what you need right here to balance it. I want it levelly balanced. That's key point number one. That's elementary number one in prescription compounding, in hormonal compounding. You never give high doses. You always balance. Balancing causes the least amount of problematic situations that you ever will have. It's when you have an unbalanced high or high, you don't want these. You got to get them back down to the right amount, the right format, the right level. Without that right level, you have a situation that's not so good for the body. All right. So, you've got a guy who is 40 years old. Let's just say 45 years old. You got a guy 45 years old. Up until 2 years ago, he always stayed in shape. He absolutely stayed in tip-top shape. He was out running. He was out exercising. He was out doing all the activities that you would think that a 45-year-old would be doing. Actually, 2 years ago, he'd be 43. In the last 2 years, he's put on 10 pounds. And in the last 2 years, he's not out mowing the lawn, he's not out golfing, he's not out doing what he normally does. One golden rule, and we learned this last week in our female or menopause program. You want to balance the body. And if you gain extra weight, estrogen deposits in adipose tissue, and that's just simply fat tissue. So if you're the lady and you put on 10 extra pounds, you're going to have a situation in which you will have unbalanced estrogen, excess estrogen in the body. I want you to go back and think this week. All right, you got a guy who normally doesn't have but this amount of estrogen. He's got this amount of testosterone. His testosterone has gone down just a little bit. But guess what happens? His estrogen has gone up. Why? Because of the 10 extra pounds. It's that simple. His metabolic rate is lower because he's not as active. He's sitting around more. And that's not a good situation. Furthermore, if we take that individual who's gained the 10 extra pounds and look at his family history, and his father had diabetes, his grandfather had diabetes. His father had cardiovascular disease and high blood pressure. His grandfather had cardiovascular disease and high blood pressure. Where's that placing him right now? Well, it's not in as good a situation as he was. And his father and grandfather both had diabetes. Okay, so you got cardiovascular disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, and you are getting into a scenario of when he's 45, what's going to happen when he's 50, 55, 60, 65? You're going to have more problems. And it just goes so to think, all right, if you've got this many problems right now, and it's not really all that bad yet, but you're going to have more problems as you age. We're getting into a situation in which it doesn't sound good for the future. Let's take the individual who has all of these problems, okay? So we know one thing, that if you have cardiovascular disease, if you have high blood pressure, if you have diabetes, if you have other situations, maybe a thyroid, underactive thyroid, so you've got hypothyroidism, and you put into that a little bit of stress because, well, wait a minute, you have always been active and all of a sudden you don't feel so good, and you begin to actually take off days from work, you lay around the house, you're not really as energetic as you used to be, and it's normal to think, oh, well, maybe I need to go to the doctor. And of course, there's these ads on television. They talk about testosterone and how good they are for the body, and we can bring your levels back up to normalcy. Now, it presents an interesting scenario. If that individual goes to their doctor and the normal thing now is for an individual to have blood tests to find out where their levels are. But what is really fascinating is I don't believe that they are tested for estrogen levels, because that's not a normal situation. And testosterone's got a little bad rap the last couple of years, because in the test they have given testosterone to individuals who have had some risk factors, just like I just mentioned. These risk factors are cardiovascular disease and diabetes and high blood pressure and Lord knows what other items. And the validity of the tests were, let's find out what happens when you give testosterone to an individual who they may have gained 40 pounds over what their age was at 20, their weight was at 20. So you've got somebody who's kind of overweight and they're getting this hormone. All right. The first thing that happens is, all right, they've already got the risk factor for cardiovascular disease, but they didn't get checked for estrogen. Because what have I just mentioned to you? You want to actually have a balance. If the testosterone has gone down and the estrogen has, with the weight gain, gone up, what's the significance of that? And I think that you'll be beginning to get sort of the picture that I'm painting here. Here's what happens, all right? We know in pharmacology that if you have declining levels of testosterone in the body, testosterone has a chemical pathway. It has a pathway that actually is going to be determined by how it breaks its esters down. And in the breaking down of that chemical, testosterone, it breaks down partly into estrogen. So the person who is 40 pounds overweight, has cardiovascular disease already has high blood pressure, they have diabetes, and they probably have some atherosclerosis because probably their cholesterol levels have gone up, and all of a sudden you've got a bad scenario. Because if you've got, all right, let's just bring the levels back up to normal. They're 50 years of age. My left hand is testosterone. My right hand is estrogen levels. And the estrogen levels have gone up even more because that individual is given testosterone legitimately by prescription from a doctor, and they're out in the marketplace. But they already have a risk factor of cardiovascular disease. And the surveys that I understand for the test that they were doing the clinical trials, they're going to determine if the testosterone had any effect on their cardiovascular health. And of course, in this situation, we had some cardiovascular deaths. And wouldn't you suspect it anyway? Because they already had heart disease, they already had high blood pressure, they already had diabetes, and then they had elevated levels of estrogen already. The summation of the study is going to indicate that yes, some of the testosterone has actually caused them to have the cardiovascular event, and I think in the study some people died. But where was the real culprit here? It doesn't seem to me to be the problem of testosterone. It's more than likely the fact that they had an unbalanced situation already with the higher levels of estrogen, which are negatively played in the body, and that increases even more their cardiovascular risk. The testosterone really, in this case, was a culprit. They should not have been given the testosterone at all, because we know in the body, if you have an unbalanced situation, that's a negative. If you have cardiovascular disease already, and then you're given testosterone, which will convert to estrogen, the conversion of estrogen increases the risk of cardiovascular disease. And yes, some of the people did pass away from cardiovascular disease. Whose fault was it? I think that the study really didn't give full credit to what actually occurred. It seems to me that the real culprit here was the conversion of the testosterone to estrogen, and that, as we have felt all along, possibly testosterone is a great safety factor for people who have normal and not all the cardiovascular risk already. So for normal people without high blood pressure, without cardiovascular disease already, if they are given testosterone, and if if their levels are low and it brings it back up to the physiological level, and you don't increase the estrogen, you should not and cannot increase the estrogen, because what you have to do in addition to that is you have to have the individual lose the weight, get the adipose tissue or fat tissue off the body, lose weight, get in shape, because that's when you decrease the risk of cardiovascular disease. You don't do it by actually using the testosterone unless it's potentiated by the fact that the individual already has excess weight and fat on the body. So some of the studies that have come out in the last 2 to 3 years have put all the blame with and on testosterone. I don't believe that that's accurate. I just don't believe it. I think that we have here a situation in which the patient probably was not tested for estrogen. Estrogen is the key factor here. Testosterone is just an outlet, and what you have to do, you have to balance the individual. Remember, balancing is key. Balancing is really key in life. If you stop and think about it, you balance your checkbook because you don't want to spend more money than you bring in. You balance your
Tires.
everything. Everything in life is balanced. And if you have a situation in which you have low amounts of testosterone and you bring it back up to the normal level, and the individual is not and has not gained the weight, then the estrogen will not increase. But if the estrogen increases, that's a risk factor. That increases the whole potency of a cardiovascular attack, high blood pressure, all the different events that can occur, stroke, etc. So the whole premise has been on the wrong subject. So, all right, we want to talk about one more thing that kind of relates to this. We want to talk about the relationship between testosterone blood levels and cardiovascular events as a heart attack or stroke. And this, we've had some studies that's actually taken what I just talked about, the testosterone and the estrogen levels, tested them, and here's what we found out from them. This was actually increasing the testosterone levels, and these were with men who actually were in the study. The study was pretty comprehensive. It was a double-blind study of 2,416 people, ages 69 to 81. I want you to just think about that, 69 years old to 81 years old. And there were 2,416 people. They had never had any type of testosterone supplementation at all, by prescription or anything. And they wanted to find out what helped the individuals and what hurt the individuals, all right? They did this study for 5.1 years, and the 5.1 years is a good amount of time because they were able to learn several things from this process. All right. For the men whose levels of testosterone were 550 nanograms per DL, there was a 30% lower risk factor of cardiovascular events. And any level of testosterone in the study that was below 550 nanograms per DLs, there was a significant risk, additional risk factor of cardiovascular events. So this study, they actually tested the testosterone and, most importantly, even more importantly, they tested estradiol in these people. And that's the results. A 30% reduction of men of cardiovascular, when they actually were able to get the estradiol testing. So if you have major problems with your body, what we're actually talking about right now, if you have cardiovascular problems, if you have diabetes, if you have risk factors, high blood pressure, if you've had a stroke, if you've had any of these, and you've gained extra weight, and you use testosterone, and you don't lose the weight, if you don't eat correctly, if you don't get in shape, if you don't lower your stress levels, you're actually increasing your risk factors of problems. But conversely, if you don't have these risk factors and you are given testosterone, it's an actual plus for you. So this is really, really, really fascinating. And I'm going to go back now to the gentleman who was 49 years old, supposedly in really great shape, who was out bike riding with his friends, and who had the cardiovascular event, immediately dying as he was falling off of the bicycle. I want you to think about this. If he had had an issue with estradiol being higher than it should have been, and had been tested for this, and actually been trying to get that level down, he might be alive today. We don't know, we'll never know the answer to this. It gets personal though when you see someone who normally does not have outwardly any problems whatsoever die young. And at 49, I consider that young. So we have some issues that we actually need to follow through. The golden rule now, if I were a 40 or 50-year-old individual, I would want to know, where are my levels, not only of testosterone, but I would want my levels known for estrogen, because who knows? It could save somebody's life. And the irony of this situation is, in that sudden death, in this particular type of cardiovascular disease, you don't get a second chance. 95% of the people who have this type of attack die immediately. There is no second chance. So from a standpoint of preventative medicine, this maybe ought to be the proper route that everybody knows about themselves. Because if you don't know that you have this issue, there's no way in the world that you can actually prevent it. Again, if you have lots of medical issues, particularly the overweight factor, and again, what happens there is if you have extra body fat, particularly around the belly, you will actually be better off if you have that test run. And Andrew Graham has just asked the question, and I'm going to give you the answer. Okay, what's the easiest and fastest way to check your levels, and how often, Tom? Andrew, here's what I would recommend. Probably, there is no set rule on it, but it can be done by blood test. It can be simply done by blood testing. It can be done by saliva testing. A lot of doctors aren't familiar with saliva testing, but it is a reliable way of telling how the body has, as far as any the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, cortisol. You need testing done on this because it is crucial. It is crucial. You can have so much testing done that will tell how the body is doing. Saliva testing is great. That we've done that for a long, long period of time. Check with your local area and find out who does saliva testing. But it is a great way. And the other thing, you need to talk to your doctor to have your doctor prescribe the order if you do the blood test. Blood testing will tell part of the story. In hormonal testing, I always liked saliva better. I've always dealt with saliva, and we've got ZRT Laboratories out of Oregon is the best company. We have dealt with them for years and years and years and years. Bottom line, it's your life, it's your health, it's your way of staying alive. You want to know if you can plan and be informed. If you can be informed about what's going on in your body, you come out a winner, and you can prevent a lot of problems from occurring. If you know you're out of shape, you need to get in shape, and testing is one way to do it. You find out if you're having lots of sleep issues. Adrenal stress index testing will tell you how your circadian cycle is actually doing. You've got the adrenal stress index. There's so many different tests now. It's so easy to actually come about finding out what and where and how you'll be getting the best results. You need to have and be an advocate for yourself. If you are out today with what we know, we can help you be healthier. And it is about your diet. It is about your exercise. It is about staying in shape. It's all about the elimination of stress. We all are under enormous amounts of stress. Our lives can be so much better. And we do so many good things for ourselves. We do it for our pets. We do it for our children. We do it for our spouse. But if you're a guy, you got to do it for yourself too. You are that missing link. You're the missing link. If you weren't around, like the gentleman who was 49 that passed away, if you're not around, it doesn't help at all to raise your children or family or support your spouse. Life is all about taking care of yourself. And the more you know, the better you are. I'm preaching to the choir, but I know myself. I've been working on this program that I'm actually helping everybody with. I'm sort of neglecting myself, so I know how it is. I know what I have to do. In the month of July, you can rest assured that Tom Jones, Pharmacist, is going to take care of himself. I'm going to get myself back in the right shape because I want to go Carolina Beach shag dancing. I love to dance.
With your wife.
And with my wife. That's right. Absolutely. So we are and have the best health care in the world, but you have to be your own advocate. You have to take care of yourself. So yes, saliva testing is wonderful. Blood testing can be fantastic. You have to have a practitioner that actually you are that you really like. You need to have someone who is going to look out for yourself and take care of you. Again, this has been such a fun week. Every week is fun because I'm talking about things that have affected my life and have affected people around me, close to me. You can only be as good as you can, but if you take care of yourself, you can really have a fantastic life. I'm going to close. The day is the third day of the week, so therefore this has been part 3 of Andropause. Is it real or is it make-believe? And today, how about testosterone? Is it good or is it bad? I think it's really good, but in certain situations it can be bad. And you really need to know these. Tomorrow we have part 4. My name is Tom Jones. I'm Pharmacist, and I love you all. And I really, really enjoy doing this. And God bless each one of you. Bye.